Good evening, everyone. It is 6:30 on January 11th, 2024, and this is the regular monthly meeting of Fitchburg's Transportation and Transit Commission. So I'm calling us to order. The roll call is that we are all here except for the Public Works representative, and we understand that he will not be able to attend, having a regular conflict. So that's a vacancy, and I talked to the mayor about it and gave her some ideas on what you could do, different ways to solve the problem of nobody in the Public Works Department being able, or they're either not able or not willing to serve on this commission. So she says we're going to run with 6 through April, and then there'll be a new round of appointments, and she'll make sure that we get someone. So till then, you're our Public Works representative, Ross.
All right.
Bill's in
Yeah, I was gonna say Bill's on there, right?
Well, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
And that was one of the options, I say, make Bill the representative and appoint another alder. Then we'd have a quorum. So that would not.
And I think we're already breaking the rules by having Gabriella in here, because I'm pretty sure alders are not supposed to be the reps to other committees and commissions.
That's not in the ordinances. But be that as it may, there are no members of the public. There's no members of the public here, and I know Rick will be here for an agenda item. And so next item will be, I would be open to a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Okay. All right, give it to Micah, thank you. Minutes. Entertain a motion to approve the minutes as submitted, or any amendments?
I have a motion to, I think we need a motion to approve, then I have a motion to amend.
Okay. So second to approve? Second. Thank you, Micah, and then your amendment.
My motion to amend is to spell my name right.
Okay, that would be important.
It's Horns, and at least a couple of times the S was omitted, so.
Okay, I was looking at the roll call, but there might be other places.
Oh, because you're two bills.
Oh, yeah, I see one now under 6B.
There were at least a couple of times.
Okay, well, do we have a second to that amendment?
I don't think it deserves an S.
Yeah.
I think it was Elizabeth. Any discussion? Anybody think bills should be Horns? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any other discussion? And on the main motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. All right, so that was unanimous. On to staff report, sir.
All right. So this is basically 2 months, actually 3 months worth of staff report, since I didn't give one last meeting and we didn't have a meeting in November. First of all, the State Urban Transit Assistance Grant application was completed and submitted. That's due right around December 20th every year. That's basically how we get the money to pay for our bus system from the state. So basically, Metro Transit sets our rates based on how much money we're expected to get in our grant, and we just get that grant and pay it all to Madison Metro Transit. Speaking of Metro Transit, I've been attending the bi-weekly BRT design meetings. The past 2 months, we've mainly been going through traffic modeling at each intersection. Fitchburg isn't seeing very many major changes to intersections. The biggest one would be at Fish Hatchery and High Ridge Trail. There is the possibility of adding a traffic signal there.
Making it full access then?
Yes, so it would be full access from High Ridge Trail, but the northbound left turn from Fish Hatchery onto High Ridge Trail would be eliminated because that's where the station needs to go.
Okay,
That is a very low usage left turning movement
Yep.
right now, and there are other routes to get to everywhere that
People
has
will have
driveways on High Ridge.
go up a Caddis Bend.
Mhm.
Do you have, is there any more on that?
The only other big intersection comment would be at Post Road. Their original proposal was to eliminate the northbound left turn onto Post Road there. That, from staff perspective, is a no-go, since there's a lot of proposed development and there's not nearly as good of a detour route, so.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
We had put in, we being Bike Fitchburg, had put in concerns about eliminating on-street bike lanes. Have they decided how to handle that?
So they have not,
But it sounds like they're planning on center running.
correct. So the county also has concerns with changing from side running to center running. There's more focus on queuing because of the driveways on the north part, Fish Hatchery Road in
Yep.
Fitchburg. So in the end, it's gonna be more on the county's comments than Bike Fitchburg's comments for side running
I'm
versus
sorry to
center
hear
running.
that, but,
But you align in that case, or Bike Fitchburg and the county align in that case.
yes. So it's not just not having on-street bike facilities, but it would also be the absence of right turn bays. And so if they're planning intersections based on center running, could it still be moved to side running?
So the stage that they are in right now is the traffic modeling stage, and the center running produces the most changes to the current traffic flow. So
I'm not seeing how that answers my question. They're
So-
assuming center running,
they're assuming center running because it's the
worst case.
worst case scenario for traffic pattern changes.
Okay.
So they're not quite at the actual design phase yet, but those are the assumptions they're making at the
Okay.
moment.
And I'm assuming that your meetings are not covering South Park Street.
They are, but I don't have a lot of,
Okay, because we
Comments on
see
that
the
part?
same issues coming up there with the exception that they have median space that they can carve into if they do want to move, and they're reconstructing, so they can move the curbs, whereas we've said we're not.
yeah.
Okay. Well, please continue to make reports on how that's coming along.
Sure.
Continue.
Can I ask, is there more about, has any decision been made about whether to come down here or to McKee, or I think originally it was just gonna go to Pick and Save?
So for the BRT has always been
Oh, it's always.
designed to go to McKee.
Okay,
And no final decision has been made to bring it all the way down to City Hall or not. We are exploring other options based on non-BRT bus route expansions. Basically because it's gonna be around 5.5 million extra in capital costs to
okay.
bring BRT all the way down to City Hall, and that cost would probably be entirely on the city of Fitchburg and not included in the grant.
Yeah, I talked to the mayor about that Monday and reminded her that you can't just put a bus on the end of a BRT line. It's got to be on the end of a bus line or extension.
Right, so this extension would involve
The-
either
the-
or extension of the 75 and or the 65, which run east-west. The 65 is mainly east of Fish Hatchery Road, and the 75 is west of Fish Hatchery Road. That's the epic route.
And I
So-
reminded her that those are not all day, everyday routes.
That is what the expansion would be.
Oh, okay, well, that would work for me.
I need a little clarification. We have a proposal or a call for proposals about our interest in getting people to the campus here.
Yep.
Does this fall within that? I forget if these, some of these issues could fall within that.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, so we're kind of running into a strange timing issue with that study and decisions that need to be made for the BRT.
Okay.
The BRT won't be under construction until 2027 at the earliest. But for the grant funding part of it, Metro Transit needs these decisions made a lot sooner than that. So exploring other options, since it was a stated goal of a lot of committee members and city staff to get the BRT all the way down here, seems prudent, even if it might step on the toes of that study a little bit.
And how do you mean step on the toes of the study?
Since one of the outcomes of that study might be that extending bus service isn't the best outcome.
You know? And just remind me, where are we, where is that? There's a call for proposals out now?
Yes, so the proposals are due on January 17th, which is a week from today, less than a week from today. And then we'll review those proposals, select a consultant. I'd have to look up my time frame, but I believe I gave myself 2 or 3 weeks to select a consultant.
But, so you're suggesting the outcome of that study might be preempted or precluded by decisions already made about BRT?
Or decisions that have yet to be made about BRT.
Right, that's a definite possibility, but we can still use that study to guide us, whether we want to continue with those bus route expansions or scale those back, et cetera. Also, we don't need to make the decision to actually expand that service until after the study comes out either. So.
What is the time frame on the study, when they're being asked to complete a study by?
That was not part of the request for proposals, the completion date of the study. That would be part of the contract negotiations with each consultant.
Okay, is that an issue that we should talk about here, or that would be relevant to this issue of making the BRT and this study compatible?
That's definitely something that's on my mind, going to be on my mind when selecting a consultant. If the commission would like to discuss that, you're free to do so. But
We're thinking this consultant might get, 4 to 6 months, kind of.
probably that time frame, yeah. So it's kind
Well, I
of,
think
it's
we
a lot
do-
of balls in the air, and with the BRT stuff, not a lot of hard dates are available at the moment, unfortunately, so.
With respect to the transit study, we certainly would like a recommendation before fall budget time.
Right.
Yes,
Otherwise, we'll be looking at 27 to do anything.
right,
So that would be an important thing when you negotiate with potential consultants.
I mean, ideally it's before CIP.
I was gonna say, if depending on what's decided with BRT,
Well, yeah,
Maybe that
if
is
BRT is part of the
sooner than
solution,
later.
that's a big, casts a long shadow across the CIP.
Yeah.
All right, we are getting you off your track.
speaking of transit,
other things, we've begun work on the Wayland Road paved shoulder project. That's kind of more bike focused than transit focused. We've been doing multiple traffic studies, kind of with the goal of making them compatible with whatever this commission comes to with Vision Zero. We've started gathering data for a citywide traffic map. Dakota Dorn, our GIS specialist, is kind of compiling all that data that'll also be helpful in Vision Zero efforts.
What does that involve beyond what we have right now?
So right now, we don't have any kind of public-facing transportation map. This would include no parking zones, stop signs, stop lights.
So all
any
traffic
kind of
controls?
Traffic control, yep.
All signage, advisory signage, street signage, maybe
Uh,
not?
Not all advisory signage,
Okay.
that would be a big lift. Mainly traffic control signs.
Okay, we'll have striping on it too, or just signage?
Not right, it won't have striping right off the bat, but that would be a goal to add later.
Okay. That sounds like a very worthwhile thing because there's lots of things I say. I would like to know the list of all the X signs in the city, or, and that's gonna be the answer to that question.
Right. Yep.
Okay, very cool.
We're still working on our streetlight LED replacements, part of safety for all road users. We've completed our Pacer ratings that we
Can
have
you
to
go
do.
back to that? What's the purpose of that?
The streetlight replacements?
Yeah, are they, you replacing them with LEDs or?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So we're replacing high-pressure sodium streetlight bulbs, which are
Oh,
very
I'm sorry, I
energy-
was thinking of traffic signals, you're talking about illumination.
yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, basically save on our electricity costs from MG&E.
Right.
And make the streetlights brighter. We've completed our Pacer rating that we're required to do on our whole road system every 2 years. We submit that to the state. And that helps with the next item, the 2024 roads planning. That's not, just kind of part of the greater transportation network of the city.
When you say planning,
So basically, every year we have our resurfacing
It-
project
so-
and our
okay, so
maintenance projects.
yeah.
So deciding what roads we want to do in 2024.
Are you starting to phase in the whole do one section of the city every year thing?
Yes, it's gonna take, I don't know how long to actually get to that point.
Right.
Cause we're cleaning up neighborhoods that we may have partially started last year or 2 years ago, and then trying to spend our money as wisely as possible.
So does that make it cheaper to do
If you don't have to
localized? Or-
drive your equipment everywhere and, yeah.
It
I
might,
know we
but
do
then-
sidewalks that way. I mean, we did back
Kind
when I.
of. Yeah,
Okay.
it still ends up driving all over the place for sidewalks, cause you're not replacing 2 panels here, 2 panels there, you know, that kind of thing. But we do zones for
A
sidewalks.
fifth of the city is
Mhm.
a big place.
Yeah. So yeah, breaking it up into neighborhoods as much as we can while still making the best use of our available funding.
So does that mean that some roads are gonna get resurfaced a few years before they otherwise would, and others might go for an extra year or two without?
Yes, correct.
Until the routine is established. I mean,
Right.
Mhm.
Is that something that's gonna, what do you think, is that gonna take 5 years, 15 years?
To actually get to
reach
the neighborhood
endpoint, yeah.
Probably 2 to 3,
Oh.
I would say,
Interesting.
yeah.
I would have thought with
My,
35 square miles, it would take a little longer than that.
yeah,
A lot of the neighborhoods are new,
True.
and they are automatically in sync, because all the roads got built within a couple of years. So,
But a lot of the neighborhoods, Terra Vesta's way over there, and, South Stoner Prairie's gonna be way over there.
but you're not requiring all the neighborhoods that get done in 1 year to be contiguous, are you?
no.
Okay.
It's more like we would redo something the size of Terra Vesta and then something the size of the Gold Edition,
Instead of 2 blocks of Richardson Street and then someplace else,
Exactly.
even though that 2 blocks of Richardson Street is turning to gravel.
That's on the list for next year.
Sprinkle a little oil or tar on it, it'll be fine.
Something I'll just kind of skim over since we'll talk about it, Fitchburg road design, that's continuing. And then Steve already kind of spoke on the sidewalk repairs. We did basically a zone and a half of sidewalk repairs last year, since it hadn't been done in 3 years, I believe. But that's finished, so next year we're doing kind of the east zone of the city, which includes Southdale and Terravessa. Luckily, Terravessa is pretty new, so
I was gonna say, if we
there
need some
shouldn't be
repairs
much.
there.
They're builder cost in Terravessa, so it's up to them to repair.
Okay,
So
and is that, if there is any damage, is that probably caused by driving heavy machinery around there as they're constructing?
yes. So a lot of it is in the driveways of the homes, where they, drive trucks on to drop materials off, stuff like that, so.
They still need an engineer to go out with a spray paint can and put pink X's on sidewalk squares.
Yeah, even though you can see the cracks in them.
Yeah, 'cause I didn't see that.
So, what do you think of the job that was done this year on the sidewalks?
It was an extremely smooth contract. We gave them 6 weeks to complete it, and they completed it in 4.
And the quality?
The quality is good.
And they did it for a third of the price.
Of Speedway, yes.
Of the other bidder,
Yeah,
Wow.
So
so,
they're on our bid list for next year, right?
correct.
That's good.
And do find out whether they'll expand and like do roads and stuff too.
And parking lot.
Yeah. Then, from last night at the Common Council meeting, the updates to the traffic management program were passed. And those were signed by the mayor. So,
They were passed with the amendments that we had
correct. They were,
seen, and Public Works put them in.
yes, they were passed with the amendments from Board of Public Works, which included all of the amendments from this body. So, so you'll relatively soon start seeing traffic calming projects from a few of the locations that we already have in the works: Osmondson, Fahey Glen, and Pembroke. So
Also from council last night.
the no parking ordinance updates. So Chapel Valley, at the curve with the crosswalk by the senior living center there, that will be signed no parking. There's a bus stop on Red Arrow Trail north of Genuine, that already parking's prohibited at bus stops, but Metro Transit asked us to sign it, so. And then there were 2 other locations that have already been signed, no parking during school hours, but they weren't in our ordinance, so we cleaned that up. Those were in Terravessa. And then parking is no longer allowed in any marked bike lane in the city. So we'll put up signs for that in known problem areas, but we're not required to sign those bike lane locations.
Do you know when the signs might go up? Specifically, I'm asking about Chapel Valley.
So Mark thought that mid-February would be.
And that's possible given the frozen
Yes.
ground? Okay.
Yes.
I met up with them too.
I didn't really want to send him an email about it this week,
Yeah, I
because
can
he's
send it.
extremely busy this week. I sent him in and said, give yourself, don't worry about it this week, but get on it when you can, so. Yeah, that's my staff update.
There was, I believe, for this year, a grant writer in the overall city budget.
Yes.
And do we know when that person will be available, and will there be any time from this person to help with transportation, grant funding with all the, bipartisan infrastructure programs coming out?
I would hope there would be time available. I don't know when that is expected to move forward.
Okay.
Cause we're not hiring a position,
Right.
it's just money
So-
for contracting the audited investment plan.
And I don't, was that planned to be contract with one firm for all of our grant writing?
I don't think there
or-
was clarity about, I don't think they were that
It's just
specific
money.
in the
Okay.
direction, I
Okay.
think it was more generic.
Which is, I suppose, good and bad, right? So you've got the freedom to choose people who are very good at writing specific types of grants. On the other hand, you've got the overhead of trying to work with more than one party.
Or find more than one party. Just remember, I'll do it for free. All right.
Sounds like
I
you
have
have two grant writers.
So I have one more question. The chair of RCC emailed me, he said he attended the MPO. They're doing they have a draft EV charging infrastructure plan out. And he said that he was concerned because he listened to the presentation and said that Fitchburg wasn't flagged as like a priority for level 3 chargers. And he thought that was an oversight, a significant oversight. And they are accepting input through January 22nd, I believe, on the draft plan. But I didn't know if you were aware of that or had been following it all.
I have not been following that.
And I don't know, I assume that that's like within your purview, but I don't actually know, maybe it's not. Maybe
Yeah,
it's
I'll-
Public Works generically.
I'll check with Phil Groupie, who's more on the sustainability side of things, and see if he's up on that. Otherwise, I'll reach out to the MPO.
Yeah, and I can forward it to to you all if you wanna make your own comments, but. Wanna flag it. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, on to review items. First is the proposed Fitchburg Road construction. Now, I don't think it's proposed that we reconstruct it, that's kind of going to be a definite thing, right?
Correct.
Okay, so it's really more of the proposed design.
Correct.
And we are lucky to have with us Rick Eilertson of AECom, who is working on this project, if we have questions for him. And we gave you the URL of what's called the roll chart, which is kind of, I've looked through the engineering, what are they, 95% plans or something?
The ones on the website are 60%.
60% plans, and they're very detailed, and you know, every cross-section and every longitudinal profile. But these kind of summarize it with different colored lines, which nobody knows what they mean because there's no key according to one of the comments. But go ahead and summarize the design and then the comments for us. And people have had a chance to look at this, I hope, on the project website. So we'll discuss and provide input, I guess.
Yeah, so the main part of the design is the roundabout at Lacey Road and Fitchburg Road. That obviously requires a decent amount of right-of-way right in the vicinity of the roundabout. So that is the focus of a fair few of the comments in this area. But then the cross-section of the road basically includes the same north-south travel lanes, one each direction as we currently have, plus a 2-foot bike buffer and a 4-foot bike lane, as well as upgrading much of the road to urban cross-section with curb and gutter and storm sewer. There's also north of Lacey Road, there is a multi-use path. It kind of starts with the existing multi-use path at the Elon Apartments and then continues off of that to the north. You can see it kind of jogging in closer to Fitchburg at Quarry Vista Drive and then continuing all the way north.
And particularly of interest is that it continues under the Verona Road.
Yes, so it goes under both the Military Ridge State Trail overpass and the US Highway 18-151 bridge, which require a lot of geotechnical engineering and some large retaining walls under both of those structures. So that's been a big focus of this project and a big lift in the design from Rick's team, so.
And where does it end? This project ends at that point that's shown there?
Yes, so this last building here for a landmark is the
Sure.
Bavaria Sausage outbuilding. It's to the south of their retail space. So it ends basically at their driveway, which is basically where the Nesbit roundabout project stopped.
And I don't derail your presentation, but I'm curious about how this does or does not address this chronic issue of surface water draining into Goose Lake and so on.
Yes, so that's another big part of this project that Rick is a lot more in depth on than I am, but there's a lot of stormwater work, including detention and storage under the road and work on Goose Lake itself to allow for drainage.
Lower the outfall?
That would be part of a different project, the outfall of Goose Lake. So what's being proposed for this project is a wetland scrape where the water from Fitchburg Road would drain into Goose Lake, basically taking some silt out and eliminating a tailwater condition that basically backs up water onto Fitchburg Road.
So is I assume town of Verona that is involved in this, or the county, or somebody else?
Yes.
Not as much as we'd like.
Well, yeah, that was the question I had too, because there's no MOU from the town of Verona on any of this, right?
Correct. Town of Verona is involved in all of the design. We've had multiple meetings with Chris Barnes, their Director of Public Works, and Sarah Gaskell, their town administrator. And I'm working on an intergovernmental agreement for their portion of the design funding. I'm waiting to hear back from Chris on that at the moment. And then they will be participating in some fashion with the cost of the actual construction. That is, that's been an ongoing discussion.
Okay. So
Any work gonna be done on that side of the road, they have to permit it and it has to go through their
Correct.
process, right, so they have to be.
That's not as much of a problem as getting them to pay for
Yeah,
their
they're-
side of the center line.
because it's not just in Fitchburg.
And another part of this project is that the center line of the road is moving because of the bike path, so the town-city border won't be directly on the center line of the road anymore.
Is road center line moving east or west
Yes.
at various points?
I think mostly it's moving west
Okay.
because the bike path is on the east side.
Oh, the multi-use path.
Yes,
Right,
sorry.
I was thinking of bike lanes. Okay, got it.
So just one last little, I assume then it's implicit in this that the chronic flooding issue of that roadway is gonna go away. We're not gonna have
That's
huge.
the goal, right?
Yes, so.
They're working as hard as they can on that part of it.
Yes, so that is the main impetus of this project, is that chronic flooding. Go away might be a strong statement. It will be extremely reduced. I don't think I would call it chronic after this project is completed.
The occasional.
Acute flooding. You can't build so that you can never flood.
Oh, yeah.
And so the fact that we're gonna encourage water to go from the road into Goose Lake, is that, what does the DNR have to say about that? Oil and particulate matter and stuff?
So Rick's team has been communicating with the DNR early and often. It will obviously have to be permitted by the DNR, and Rick's been doing a lot of work to make sure that the permit application is not the first time they're hearing about this, and making sure they're okay with all the work we're doing.
So right now, any of
Before the
that
permit
runoff is
application.
just like in a swale on the side of the road and seeps into the groundwater and those people are drinking it out of their wells?
Because their stormwater system, then the design will have to have best practices for treating it before it's discharged. Whereas
Right now.
right now, it's catch as catch can.
But, and I've never completely understood this, but I do know that this surface water issue isn't just localized to that spot. I mean, there's a big drainage area that's implicated in this
Goes
problem.
up to Wingrestone.
Yeah, and I mean, is part of the remedy involve things up there, or physical?
So this project is focused on Fitchburg Road. There's also other projects that are focusing more on Goose Lake. There's some work that Ben Schulte, our environmental engineer, is doing with Chris Barnes, who's the same contact I have with Town of Verona, on the outfall of Goose Lake and how to use various pots of money to address some issues there. So the main issue we're running into here is the tailwater condition on Goose Lake, which basically means the water level of Goose Lake is too high to accept any of the water from Fitchburg Road. So.
Okay, but our remit, our assignment really is, I mean, those are all the important engineering and water issues, but they're not really our turf. Our turf is how the road should be designed, I suppose. I mean,
Can you go back to the roundabout? So I was not aware of this when I reviewed this previously, but you can tell from this diagram that the multi-use path on the top, that is the west side of the roundabout, is not the full 10 feet that we would expect at a modern roundabout.
So that is not being called a multi-use path in this project. That's
Understood.
being referred to as a
It's just the bike
bypass.
So it's thought to be a one-way bicycle-only facility.
Correct.
Okay, so my concern about that is that there are crosswalks that connect to it. And,
Yes.
and that pedestrians will go where they will. And if a pedestrian, for example, the folks that live on the west side, was to use that, it's of substandard width for two-way traffic or for bikes and peds to coexist. So the ramps that go from the ends of the bike lane up to the multi-use path and up to the bike bypass are routinely narrower because they're one-way bikeways. But I am concerned about that being narrower than the traditional multi-use path. And I guess I'd like to know why that was, I mean, it's to save land and to save trees, but is it worth it to have that narrower facility there to save what you're going to save?
I think a better way to think of that facility is more like a cycle track. It only connects to the bike lanes. There's no sidewalk continuing north or south of the roundabout. And its intended use is only for bicyclists who are uncomfortable with taking their lane, going through the roundabout. I think you might be correct that there might be some foot traffic from those three homes that that facility fronts on, but that's fairly minor.
What was
and
Go ahead.
We actually had discussed removing the east-west crosswalks and decided to leave them in due to various bike movements that might happen, say someone coming south on Fitchburg Road and wanting to get onto, using the bike lane, and wanting to get onto the path on Lacey Road, or wanting to go to the bike lane on the other side of Lacey Road.
Mhm.
But that wasn't comfortable with doing that inside the roundabout with car traffic.
Mhm. Yeah, like at rush hour.
Correct.
Okay,
As long as we're talking about that specific bike bypass, anybody else think the ingress on that for southbound bike traffic is less than ideal there? It looks like a hard right turn and a hard left turn.
So that it shares a driveway entrance, basically this line work here is the driveway apron and that continues up into this house. And the purpose of combining the bike bypass entry and the driveways is to reduce the number of curb cuts, basically, and to give a wider entry for bikers, a full driveway width rather than a 4-foot standard bike bypass ramp.
and you have the same thing at the exit.
Well, that one looks a lot easier because the bike lane is a pretty wide target there as you're coming out.
Mhm.
You don't have to do, you have to veer instead of making 2 right angle turns.
And we can look at adjusting that angle
Yeah,
as
I mean,
well.
that just, it reminds me of the the corner of by the movie theater.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's not that sharp. At the southeast quadrant of Commerce Park and McKee,
Right.
Okay.
that we fervently complained that that was too sharp an angle for a bikeway. But it got built and now people run over the edge of the corner. To me, the entrance reminds me of the driveway of the Madison Recycling Center just north of the Cannonball. I routinely take that driveway and ride on the sidewalk for a few feet rather than turn in at the Cannonball entrance because it's a much gentler curve. And as a bike user, I don't think that that's bad. So you've got a flat sidewalk portion of the driveway, and that could be tilted so that the north end is farther east. I think that's what you were just talking about.
Right, yes.
But that would make the ramp too steep right there if it were flat. And I suppose
You might be right about that, yes.
I suppose it would have to be flat. I can see Bill's concern, but that one doesn't worry me as much as the 6 feet wide path. Oh, the other thing I wanted to ask about was the driveway that's that is jogged north of the south crosswalk.
This one?
Yeah.
So this one, there's a comment here, and we've actually already talked about this with the property owner and changed this in the design.
Okay.
This driveway will basically follow the current driveway that you can kind of see is kind of transparent there, and will extend the mountable curb further to the north to allow them to go either direction out of their driveway.
I think that's a better solution. I had suggested it without reading that comment because even on my 40-inch TV, 2K TV, I found it hard to read those little red blocks. And thanks for blowing them up, but I did find her comment in the comments that you included in the packet. So I'm glad you made that change. There would be a stormwater inlet change then too, right? To get around that?
Right, yeah. Those are,
Easy.
fairly easy to make, yeah.
And then the driveway to the left of that one, would that also have mountable curb?
This one?
Yeah.
Yes, so basically this whole island would be mountable up to, I forget the distance from the crosswalk, but a certain minimum distance from the crosswalk.
Okay. Another comment that I had put in was about the lane widths. And I think you're proposing 11-foot travel lanes.
Correct.
And I cited in my comment the Johns Hopkins study. Why are we using 11-foot instead of 10 or 9.5? And can we use 9.5-foot travel lanes?
I mean, we can design for whatever width we,
Well, we want to design, this is going to be signed 35, right? Except it will be 15 in the roundabout, but.
correct. So one reason is that this is more of a, even though we're upgrading it to an urban section, this is still more of a rural section of Fitchburg, and the town of Verona.
We got 4-story buildings abutting the sidewalk right next to it.
That is true. But there's also single-family homes and recreational use north of
What are
there.
lane widths on Lacey? They do lane widths on Lacey?
They're 11 feet.
Those are 11.
They're not.
Not
They're
when I
between
measured them.
9.5 and 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
Now,
mean, they may have been designed 11, but they're striped 9.5 and 10.
and we're counting the distance between the stripes.
Right.
So I think it was like 5 inches, 4 inches, 5 inches for the double line.
Yes, yeah.
And I counted the width of the buffer as part of the buffer. You know, the buffer stripes as part of the buffer. So that leaves
That's probably where the
within,
difference is.
between the stripes, it's 9.5 and 10, all the places I measured.
And
And that's what I would like to see on this road.
And I don't know anything about Johns Hopkins studies, but one's intuitive sense is a wider lane is gonna be safer.
Wider lanes are more comfortable for people.
Yeah.
And so because of the theory, and you can read this on the Federal Highways website, people have a budget for discomfort. And so if you give them more room and they're more comfortable, they'll drive faster and use up that budget for discomfort by driving faster. So my reading on this, including the popular articles about the Johns Hopkins academic study, they found that narrower lanes were no less safe and in some cases safer. And the concern is, by traditional engineering practice, is that narrower lanes give you less leeway and you could more likely have glancing crashes and things like that. Right now, to go to 9.5 or 9-foot lanes, the main concern is bus and truck mirrors. And so they did an academic study of that and found all the bus and truck mirror hits and found that the cost benefits were positive for the narrower lanes, that the crashes did not increase, in some cases decrease because people were driving slower, and that there were not an increased number of mirror hits. So I think that I would urge you to go with 10 or 9.5-foot lanes, or make a very convincing case why you shouldn't, because this is a busy place, and all the development that we're expecting and the traffic from the Edgewood facilities, a lot of those people are going to come Verona and Nesbitt Road and Fitzgerald Road. So I think that it's important that we really make the narrower lanes our standard and argue when necessary for wider lanes, instead of having to argue for narrower lanes with each project.
Right. So just to, let me share my screen again, just to close the book on this. So these are the typical sections for the Lacey Road reconstruction. These show 17-foot lane widths. That's then subtracting the 2-foot bike buffer and 4-foot bike lane, that gives 11 feet per design. So the design is from center of the striping to center of the striping. So
Okay.
when I say 11-foot lanes, that's
Okay,
the same
that's what
width as on Lacey Road.
So, all right, so center of stripe, your center of road to center of buffer stripe, is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay,
No, wait a minute.
so,
So we have 1 foot in the gutter.
That this 17-foot does not
Does not
extend all the
include
way
that.
to the face of the curb.
So then there's 4 foot clear before the buffer stripe, and then the buffer, 2 buffer stripes plus the inner stripe area is 2 feet, right?
The center of each of the buffer stripes to the center of the other buffer stripe is 2 feet.
oh, it's not the outside of the stripe.
The outside edges were what I measured on Lacey Road. I
Did
thought,
that come to 2 feet?
yeah. So are you saying that we're really getting, if you count the stripes as part of the buffer, we're real, so what are they, 4-inch stripes or 6-inch stripes?
4-inch.
So we're getting 28-inch buffers.
If
Okay,
you're measuring to the outside of the
Center,
stripes.
okay. So, so that's only 2 inches. I'm more concerned about the 1/2 foot in the middle. But 17, so 34, we got 4, 2,
And 11.
and 11.
But that 11, I mean, from the center of the road to the outside of the center stripe, what is that distance? That's gotta be close to a foot.
The center of the road to the outside of the center stripe,
Yeah,
That's a 1/2 foot.
yeah, that would be 6 inches.
This is
Those
5, 4,
stripes are,
5.
those stripes are 4 inches wide,
even the center ones,
yes.
But there's 2.
yes. Well, one on each side of the center line.
Well,
So when you were saying it's a more rural road, and so the lanes are wider, why do more rural roads need to be wider? I guess that was the implication I got from that.
Right, so you see more heavy equipment,
Okay.
stuff like that.
And are we getting truck traffic on there from the quarries and?
Yes, yeah, and that would end up, one thing down the line that I'm going to be working on is a truck route ordinance, and Fitchburg would be one of our
So would it,
designated truck
oh, it
routes.
would go, so people wouldn't go over to Commerce, they would go,
Commerce might also be on there, just based on where the quarries actually are and where we want to direct them.
but keep them off of Seminole Highway is the goal, or?
Yes, basically. Those decisions haven't been made
Yeah.
yet, but
But presumably there won't be truck traffic for at least the life of the quarry, which is, what, at least a decade? I'm not sure what the life of the quarry is.
I don't know
They're
what the life
saying
is either, but yes.
they're Plain and Dolan is denying any end date. So,
I
I
thought there
mean,
was an update though from when
Wingra Stone no longer quarries, but they still have truck traffic because they still do their ready mix there. So I don't know if Payne and Dolan has that idea, but, and especially since this Yahara Materials wants a new quarry on Lacey Road.
Back to this road width, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Road width thing, just, I think I followed that discussion about the difference between how it's measured and the thickness of the stripes and whatever. But it sounds like the proposal for Fitchburg Road will have lanes the same as the New Lacey Road,
Correct,
whatever that is.
correct.
So there's the same,
11 feet, or whether you say, no, in fact, if you go out and measure it, it's only 10 and a half. So is Lacey acceptable to your view of how,
Yep.
what width should be? So then this should be
so
acceptable.
the curb to curb distance here is the same as Lacey, which I did not understand from the diagrams, because the diagrams don't, they show where the stripes are going, but they don't show the width of the stripes and the profile and the cross section.
Right.
If the curb to curb distance is the same, then I'm happy.
Mhm.
But, so maybe it's a semantic problem.
It's kind of like a 2x4 isn't actually 2 inches by 4 inches.
Very rare.
And I do think on the more policy side of what this commission looks at, narrower road widths, if those are part of city policy, then that's something we would follow in our designs.
Yeah, but we don't have policies for these kinds of things. That's what we're hoping for out of Vision Zero.
That's yes.
But in the meantime, we want to look at individual projects and see how they would fare under that future thing. I forgot one point, I would like, if I may, go back to the bypass.
Mhm.
And that is with respect to snow removal. Right now, so this will be plowed by the city because it's not a sidewalk, it's won't be the responsibility of the adjacent landowners.
I believe that's correct.
And right now, the city has two kinds of equipment that the Parks Maintenance uses to clear paths and sidewalks. Path width and sidewalk width. And the path that extends from Whalen Road to the frontage road along Fish Hatchery has narrow places due to historical placement of signals at East Sherrill Drive and at Lacey Road. And therefore, they must plow that with sidewalk equipment, even though most of it is 10 foot wide. And in this case, has any consideration been given to how we would control ice and snow on the bypass, because you would not be using the same equipment as the crosswalks and the multi-use path along Lacey and Fitcherona because they're 10 feet wide?
We have not discussed that with.
Okay, I would like to
Streets
put
and
that
parks.
on the scale on the side of making it 10 foot. And I did not think about that today, until today when I was shoveling snow.
Think about it more tomorrow.
Yes, I will. Anything else on Fitcherona that you want to present or ask us about, or that commissioners want to discuss?
If there's any other questions, happy to field those, but.
Yeah, I had a question on the dashed lines there for the bikers to take the lane. It's,
These?
well, look at the ones on the east side instead. So on the
Sorry.
southeast corner.
Yeah,
No,
south.
southeast corner, Fitcherona and Lacey
The
intersection,
other
so
southeast
Fitcherona
corner.
approaching the roundabout, for instance.
This one, all right.
Yeah, so the biker, I mean, you're not supposed to cross the solid line, so the biker is gonna have to take the lane just as the car is constrained by that median island. It seems like the dashes ought to start further back.
No, that does not indicate that the cars may cross that.
No. It indicates the biker can cross into the lane, into the traffic lane to take the lane.
Yes.
And if they're not able to do that until the car is constrained on one side by that median, that's a recipe for a collision.
Since the car is gonna be, if they were cheating to the left, they would be coming more to the right in their lane and not able to go left anymore.
Right, they would, yeah, they're constrained on the left-hand side, just as the biker is forced to make
They're not
that
supposed
decision.
to, they're not supposed to cross that paint line either above Ross's cursor. And this is a design feature of the modern roundabouts that has been in all along. I remember when roundabouts were first being introduced, and when you got your tag renewals for your motor vehicle, there was an insert for 2 years in a row. It said, how to drive around roundabouts. And it had a section on bicycles.
Most people evidently haven't read that.
Apparently not. I can't speak for others. And this is also the point at which they're getting a 15-mile-an-hour advisory speed sign.
Mhm.
So I don't see how changing the nose of the island.
He's not
No,
suggesting.
I'm suggesting that rather than starting the dashes here,
Yeah.
we start them like here so that, you know, the car, like if the biker takes the lane and the car needs to turn left, they're not gonna smack into that.
So that's just.
I have never felt constrained of crossing those lines into the travel
So you
lane.
just paint the road differently?
Correct. Extend the dashed lines
So
upstream a little.
that's something we can look at. I'm not sure on the standard distance that those
Yeah.
I
stripes are.
didn't know if this was schematic or only or what. It just,
I mean, this, if there aren't any comments on anything, this would be how it is actually designed. But do you have an issue with how these are painted normally on other roundabouts? Because we would basically be using a standard
yeah, none of
distance here.
the places I ever go involve roundabouts.
Okay, you should live in my part of the city. So if you go down Lacey Road to the east from Fish Hatchery,
Yeah.
there is a roundabout at Fahey Glen.
Correct.
And for that roundabout, first of all, it's kind of a nice one because bikers are going about 30 because it's downhill, all right? And so I'm checking behind me and I'm gonna move over there because 35 is the speed limit as soon as there's a gap. And I am never felt constrained by the painted bike line about moving across it into a general purpose travel lane. That line is to indicate motor vehicles can't cross into your area, in my understanding. So that's why they become dotted at bus stops.
Right.
But if a bus is parked at a bus stop and you're encountering the butt of a bus, and it's safe, you can go into the travel lane to go around the bus, which is stopped for passengers, and even though your line is solid. So I don't think that that's necessary that be dotted to signal to the bicyclists that they can cross over. It does remind me that since our last meeting, there's been a new version of the MUTCD that controls all of these things.
Excuse me?
The Manual Uniform Traffic Control Devices. So that's
It's, you know about the Bible? That's what this is for Ross.
It's more boring.
Yep. The big controversy is that it doesn't have the helmeted bicycle rider as a permissible bicycle lane symbol, and only the riderless bicycle. And so people are in a knot about whether they can continue to use their current stencils. So, but that is the Arcania of the MUTCD. I would just like to, Rick Eilertson, you've been very patient. Do you have anything to add or ask?
Nope, I'm good. Happy to fill in if there's any other blanks that you'd like me to fill in, but I think we're good.
Water level or anything, since you are the expert in that area?
Well, I will say one of the things that's I'm pretty excited about this project is that when we did the modeling for Fitchburg Road back in 2019, we did not think that it would be feasible to actually right now, I don't know if Ross has the PIM4 plan set, the roll plot available, but the green on that drawing shows the proposed storm sewer. So with actually putting that 10-foot wide asphalt path underneath the overpasses, right now there's a 30-inch diameter concrete pipe that flows the wrong way. It flows from south to north. And I mean, the direction of slope is from south north. It actually flows from north to south when it surcharges high enough. So in the big storm events, well, actually anything over a 5-year design storm, water back surcharges in that pipe. So it's in the way for the pass, so we have to remove the pipe anyway. So with that removal, we're actually able to replace that with either, we're still doing some tweaking on whether it needs to be a 30-inch diameter pipe or a 24-inch diameter pipe, but basically there'll be a new pipe under that path that'll actually flow the correct way. And just that alone dramatically improves the it lowers the likelihood of flooding. Right now it floods I mean, it gets up to be 3 feet high in the 100-year design storm, and a foot in like a 5 in a 2.5, well, between a 2 and a 5-year design storm, it's flooding about a foot high. So some vehicles are still trying to drive through at that 1 foot elevation, but we're still not quite down to what we'd prefer to be like a 25-year design storm with no flooding on the road. We are getting some flooding in a 10-year design storm, which is like a 4.2 inch per 24-hour period rainfall, but it's much improved from what it currently is. And again, all of this is assuming that we're able to also be lower in the water level in Goose Lake. Fortunately right now, with the low water year that we had this past year, Goose Lake is actually down to kind of a normal elevation, well below where flooding would be an issue on the Fitzroy Road. But if we've had 4 consecutive years from 2018, effectively from 2018, that it's been super high, and anytime we get a big rain event, it's impacting Fitzroy Road more than it would otherwise.
That is,
But yeah, and I think Russ. Oh, sorry, Steve.
I just said that is very encouraging.
Yeah, and like Ross had said, we've been able to have Ben and Ross and I have had quite a few number of contacts with DNR staff and Dane County staff, and at least have verbal understanding from them that this is something, the proposed grading that we've got incorporated is something that they at least verbally indicated they're willing to consider permitting, which was another big it's another big hurdle. Obviously, we don't have the permits yet from them, but we expect that's basically the next thing we're anticipating doing once we get thumbs up from the city.
Sounds great. Any questions for Rick? Well, thank you for coming on, Rick. We really appreciate it, and all your work in the project.
Sounds good. Thank you, everyone.
For those who don't know, Rick was for many years our environmental engineer here at the city.
And I'm sorry, I didn't catch, he is now with a private company?
Yeah, he's with
AECom.
AECom, who's the contractor for this. And as he was telling me, he is not a transportation engineer, but he plays one on TV and for this project. But his expertise is really in stormwater management, as Bill will remember.
Well, it's an interesting and very large problem.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So, does anybody want to make a formal commission recommendation to Ross about this project, or?
What is the process of approval? I mean, I don't.
Well, it doesn't come to us. It'll go to Public Works.
Yes, so basically, we'll go through the design process. There is no formal approval of the design, but the actual funding for construction, that will go through Public Works and Council.
It's not like Lacey Road where we had a really big elaborate public process and then neighborhood steering committee, and heaven help us if we had to go through that again.
We have had 2 public involvement meetings for this project so far, though.
We are advisory to the plan commission or somebody like that, so it's appropriate for us to make.
No, we're advisory to the council.
Okay.
They did
But
not.
there's a plan commission rep on our.
Yeah, they did not refer the design to us and apparently they're not gonna even prefer the design to Public Works for approval. They're not gonna approve it by resolution. But they're gonna ask the engineers if it works and try to figure out how to fund it. There was one more thing I forgot to mention, that's protected bike lanes. Bike Fitchburg requested those, as did one of your other commenters. Is there any fiscal estimate on that or operational feedback?
So I don't have a cost estimate put together for that, but one of the main issues that protected bike lanes cause is snow removal.
Mhm.
It would require sidewalk equipment or even a new type of equipment if the bike lane is only 4 feet wide. So that's one of the main issues.
So that's why I proposed, why Bike Fitchburg proposed the mountable curb. It's the same curb that you're already using between the truck apron and the travel lane of the roundabout. And so in that scenario, you would clean it with the plow wing. It's a 3-foot standard and 4-inch rise. And so you would need more width, which we would propose to take out of the travel lanes. And you would be able to clean it with our plows. We already do. One question on the design would be that if you were to use such a thing, then the bike lanes would drain toward the median into this curb, and the stormwater inlets would be in this curb. Again, it's a mountable, and it has like a short flange toward the travel lane, and then a long flange toward the travel lane, and a mountable part that's 6 inches tall, and then it slopes this way. So water would drain from the travel lane and from the bikeway into this. So each of these stormwater inlets would need to be moved closer to the center line. But
Then tell me about the edges of the road,
then the edges would be your standard curb and gutter. But
So they
instead
would-
of,
so you wouldn't
instead of
have-
draining in, they would be reject.
Okay.
The type that you would normally use on a median, that water would drain away from them across the bike lane into this.
And the reason we would put a curb on the outside rather than just a shoulder?
Well, you want to hold the road together. So you would either put, if you wanted nothing because you wanted to be able to roll off there, or there was a driveway there, you'd have a ribbon curb that doesn't have any height to it.
Yeah.
But normally you would use the same kind of curb that you would use on a median, so it would be a 1-foot gutter and a 6-inch rise and a 1-foot curb top. And I think that they're 1 foot instead of 6 inches because of plow durability. So I would like to know, so this design would solve the snow removal problem. The main disadvantage is that now you're running a curb extruder down each side of the road twice. And therefore you've got a lot more expense in the concrete. And so we thought, we need to get to protected bike lanes somehow in Fitchburg instead of painted only bike lanes. And this would be, because the area from the roundabout between the roundabouts is not very long, it would be a good place to pilot this. So I would be interested in a cost estimate for how much more it would be, because it would be more.
One other thing that adding the mountable curb plus the reject curb on the edges of the bike lanes, it would change the grading elevations of the edge of the curb where it goes into the yards. And frankly, we're already running fairly close to our design budget, and it would introduce a lot more design challenges and design time.
Well, then for the next project, can we get an estimate for this project, even if you deem it infeasible at this 60% stage of the design?
Yeah, I can put together a cost estimate for this project, just as kind of an example.
Yeah, let's just go from between the two roundabouts.
Colleen Hosley would have us believe that there's plenty of grant money available just for the asking, for design work.
Yes, then we would run into schedule issues where we already have grants for this project, and applying for another grant for the design would push us on the timing for the grant for the construction.
So what this will do is will inform us so that when we start to talk about, for example, Sain Road and McCoy and South Sain, which is a future project or some other future project, we will at least know what it costs per foot or mile to have this kind of a setup.
And I would, from my perspective, this would be a good policy point where this would be in mind of staff and our consultants from the get-go on these projects.
Indeed.
Because that site, Sain and McCoy reconstruction is basically at the same point in design as this
It's also
project.
left the gate.
Yes.
Okay, well, but for the next project, if you could work that up.
Yeah, I mean,
Even if it's infeasible.
Yeah.
For
No,
this
I can,
project.
at the next meeting, I can put that cost estimate together just as an example on this job.
Thank you for that. All right, very briefly, so anything else on Fitchrona? Very briefly then for Rimrock, I did contact, let's see, I think it's in here, so I don't.
yes, it is.
Yep. Did ask the county, and apparently the county doesn't ask anybody, they just do roads. But I did inquire, and it was referred to this Jeremy who came back to me, and I just thought that you all would be interested, that they do plan to narrow. So it's not a reconstruction of Rimrock, it's a resurfacing, and that they do plan to go with buffered bike lanes. And right now, it's very uncomfortable biking there, one, because the pavement is very near its end of life, and secondly, because there are no buffers. And conventional wisdom or standards or recommendations of various bodies say that it can be comfortable if it's 25 miles an hour or 30 miles an hour in a bike lane or 35 miles in a buffered bike lane. And we have 35 miles in a conventional bike lane. So having to be a buffered bike lane will make it into a so-called low-stress route instead of its current high-stress route. So I thought I was very encouraged by that and wanted to share it with you. Any questions about that? And I think that it's great that we have a county that is, you know, I don't know what a future executive does, but Joe Parisi has an annual bike summit, which he usually has at the Lussier Center that I've attended for a number of years. And he has Pam Dunphy speak about highways and Chris James talk about paths and parks, and always tells us about the bike plans. And it's his goal to connect every park and every city and village in the county with low-stress bikeways. And so hence the Lower Yahara River Trail, and hence this project, and hence all the, you know, when they resurfaced Fish Hatchery Road, we got paved shoulders. Not as big as we'd like, but much better than none. So it's great that the county takes care of that kind of stuff. Any questions or discussion on that? More of a point of information. Okay, and then our last discussion item is this trying to advance Vision Zero. I have an action item to schedule some time for Colleen to, and perhaps us or Ross, to talk to the council about Vision Zero and the safe system approach and this Safe Streets for All federal grant funding, which is like a geyser of money that we should try to capture some of. I talked to the mayor on Monday, and she recommends that we wait until a new council is seated with any changes after April. So that is our timeline for talking to the council. And therefore, I would be talking to a new president of the council to try to get that scheduled. Or maybe the same one, we'll see. But just for our learning, I provided this handout, and the safe system approach consists of 5 components: safe road users, safe vehicles, safe speeds, safe roads, and post-crash care. And the safe speeds and the safe roads are what these 28 proven countermeasures are about. That's something that engineers, public works departments can affect. They can't affect the vehicles perhaps, or the users, or EMS. But I wanted you to see these are the things that Federal Highways says you should be doing these things because they are proven safer. So some of these we're familiar with, like rectangular rapidly flashing beacons and roundabouts instead of signalized intersections were appropriate. Others were new to me, such as wider edge lines, 6 inches instead of 4-inch fog lines on rural roads, proven to help keep people from deviating off the roadway.
You mean the painted line on
The painted line on the edge of the road, make it wider. Another thing, of course, is to make sure you're using retroreflective paint and keeping it refreshed. Another one that I thought was fascinating is if you have a worrisome intersection where there have been crashes or where it fits the profile of other intersections that have had crashes, such as approximately equal intersecting roads that have like a 4-way stop. They're saying a low-cost, high-value thing to do is to use stop signs that have reflective post covers, they're red, and then you have warning signs before the stop signs, and you put reflective post covers on those, they would be yellow. And so when people approach that stop sign, so think of, for example, Fitchburg Road at Wayland, most of us have been through that, you get extra warnings that there's a 4-way stop ahead. And compared to like the cost of a crash, I mean, just an ordinary stop sign costs a couple $100, right? Right? So, but now you put that post on, you put another post, you put the covers of the post on, and you put another sign that says stop sign ahead. That's really cheap compared to one crash. And so they're recommending these things. So, bicycle lanes we know about. Variable speed limits is new to me. Corridor access management is something that we already did on Fish Hatchery Road to reduce the number of driveways that intersect with the road. So these are the kinds of, people say, well, what's this going to cost to have Vision Zero? And so these are the kinds of things that we'll be putting in. And some of them are expensive, like roundabouts or signalized intersections, like we're going to get at Sherrill and Lacey and South Sayin, hundreds of thousands of dollars, or roundabouts are more than hundreds, are they $1 million?
For a roundabout?
Yeah.
Roundabout's a little cheaper than a signal.
Than a signal.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So in any event, some of these things are expensive, but others are cheap. And as I pointed out in a message to Ross, maybe today or yesterday, about the Safe Streets for All grant funding. If we could direct the money that we have budgeted for traffic calming to be a local match for Safe Streets for All grant, we increase the amount of money we have to spend by 5. Now, we wouldn't have that kind of money to respond to necessarily neighborhoods requesting speed bumps, but we could still use them for safety countermeasures. And so I wanted everybody to continue their education on this. Maybe each of these, if you have not visited this webpage, which is partially printed here, each of these countermeasures has about a 2-page webpage about it. And it goes to academic references, has photos, things like that. So that was my purpose in bringing this up. Did anybody see anything that they wanted to talk about in this group of countermeasures? Things they hate or love or?
Especially after the traffic management program discussion last night, all of this ties in very nicely. And I'm definitely interested in, how we can use this to inform how every new road that we build gets constructed.
I think one of the problems with the neighborhood traffic management process and some of our neighborhood safety committees, or whatever those things are called, is that
Those are TCCs.
TCCs, that's it.
Traffic calming committee.
Traffic calming. Citizens know about one thing, and that is speed bumps.
Right.
Yep.
And for example, there's a thing called a speed pillow that looks like a speed bump, but for 8-foot vehicle tire spacing, you don't encounter the bump.
Right.
And that helps buses and school buses and emergency vehicle response because we use the big chassis.
Oh my gosh.
And so there are all these kinds of arrows in our quiver that
Yeah.
he knows about and that we can find on these websites that, so what we want to do is throughout this neighborhood traffic management process, and when you're dealing with your constituents, you say, we want to know what your problem is. We will, and you can make suggestions, but we have the best people to come up with the solutions to that problem, and it may not be what you expect. So we have this very detailed suggestion from an activist for the crosswalks at Chapel Valley Road, but these are not all the solutions. And I was telling him, for example, I don't know if I have that diagram here, but I was telling him about the various kinds of high visibility crosswalks, and I was telling him about neck downs or bump outs, where you make the road skinnier just in one place. You don't have to move the whole curb, but just do it at the fire hydrants where people are not allowed to park anyway. And that slows the drivers down dramatically. And if you go down Nakoma Road.
We had this literally the exact same conversation at council last night.
Okay, I will stop then.
It's just so funny that you say it, because we had the exact same conversation with it. There's more other ways to be creative, and I literally talked about those sometimes on Nakoma Road, which I'd never seen before.
All right.
But yeah, the fact that it's in the hands of our engineer, I think is the important part, right? Because there's lots of research nowadays, and we just don't know what's possible, but there are things, and I'm excited
We know a
to
little
see
bit
new
more
things.
about what we don't know than the average citizens.
Yes.
But there are still many things that we don't know.
Yeah, and that was really interesting about the two you pointed out, the wider edge lines, the
Mhm.
extra warning for the stop sign.
So go to that page and click on
It's
each link.
fascinating.
Any suggestions for things that we want to be sure to be, along with anything the council brings to us for our next meeting?
I didn't see anything in the consent agenda that was coming
There's the
here or
flag.
should come here.
Yeah.
I did want, I'm sorry, this is slightly different, but there was a really interesting podcast from The Daily. It's a New York Times podcast.
Mhm.
It was called why are so many more pedestrians dying in the United States?
Mhm.
I don't know if you heard it, but
I didn't hear it,
I'm
but
gonna
it's certainly a big topic on the things that I read.
Because you're looking at the phones.
it's about a 20-minute. Well, that's part of it, but they talk about how complex it is. It's more than just that, but the 2009 is when it jumped significantly. So anyway, I'm gonna send it to you guys in case you wanna listen to it. It's only about
That's
20
cool.
minutes, but it's really, really
Speaking of New
interesting.
York Times, though, about 10 years ago, you can find the article that says, is it okay to kill a pedestrian or a bicyclist? I forget what but I mean nationwide, like, if you kill someone with your car, you're like 99.99% certain that you will suffer zero consequences other than the repair work to your car.
As long as you stop.
When I got hit,
Right.
when I got hit in 2010, it was a $108 fine for the lady.
I didn't know you got hit. That's terrible.
I was going to my haircut on November 23rd, 2010, and going north on Seminole Highway, and a woman in a Prius left hooked me. She was going south on Seminole Highway, and she turned into Seminole Center Court, and she said, "I couldn't see you." And of course, it was sunny and 10 in the morning, and maybe she had some glare, but said, "Then don't turn left if you can't see," you know? But I always say that if it had been a F-150, I would have been killed. But instead, I merely broke her windshield with my helmet.
Oh my gosh, that's terrible.
All right, so we don't have anything else to bring up, and if you spot something that is of interest, let me know that, is in the design or construction phase or something like that. Otherwise, we will meet on February 8th.
I will not be here.
Okay.
I'll be out of the state, and it just occurred to me, a lot of people go traveling in February, but if anybody else is not gonna be here, it might justify moving.
Because we still need 4.
But if,
We have two
particularly light, then maybe this is one of the meetings that we don't have for the year.
Yep. As Bill pointed out on the consent agenda, there is like a flurry of activity in the fall as you get ready to go into bidding things out in the winter. And this time of year, those ships have sailed. And then construction season starts up. All right. If anyone is going to miss a meeting that they can anticipate, do email me and Ross, please. And thank you, Bill, you're excused. And motion for, yes.
There is a decent chance I won't be here at that meeting either, but I won't
Okay,
know
well,
for
just-
a week or so.
Just
I'll
let
let
us
you
know.
when it.
Yep. And if the agenda shapes up the way we think it will, then
Yeah.
might be a good one to skip.
I also have an announcement.
Oh, yes.
The Monday before we meet, February 5th, is Transit Equity Day. So it's Rosa Parks' birthday on the Sunday, that we celebrate on the Monday. The governor issued a proclamation, but you should check it out.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, any other announcements besides our next meeting and Rosa Parks Day? Motion for adjournment, please.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Elizabeth, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
I think that we can pretty much count on an hour and 40 minutes. All right, we are adjourned.